miserable.
Okay, here we are. We're back with the Miserable Podcast, and we have 1 hour to record on this memory card. So let's do this. We just recorded another one immediately before this one, so we're kind of juiced up and in the groove. So we started this, and Kenny asked, so what is this next one about? And they don't even know. So I'm going to drop the bomb on them right now. But I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think a good topic of discussion today is taking criticism. So especially if you're doing a creative endeavor, but man, no, I'm going to take that back. That's how you know this is off the cuff. This is live and unedited. I'm going to take that back because I think taking criticism applies to everyone who is working with other people or trying to accomplish something. Or, I mean,
criticism applies to anyone and anything.
If you're doing anything, there
alive,
is the possibility of taking criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think in our experience, we've all had jobs, so we've experienced on that side. We're kind of inclined to talk more about the creative aspect of things because we all create things that people see or listen to. So I'm kind of inclined to look at it that way. But in general, I have experienced my fair share of criticism. And I have also seen myself grow in how I take it and experience it in general. So I want to start off the conversation with the obvious direction that this could go, in that I have found criticism to be probably the most important thing that someone can give me.
Yep.
From the right person.
Yeah. But I wouldn't discount anybody's criticism.
I don't think it's from the right person. It's
especially initially.
Yeah, I think it's just the right
motive.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I kind of mean like, as far as someone who's critiquing something of yours that maybe they don't have the knowledge to really give you a fair critique.
I would disagree.
What do you like? Expound.
Because I don't think anybody has to know anything about what I'm doing in order to tell me how they're experiencing it.
Well, I'm not talking about the experience. I'm talking more about the technical. Like
give an example.
Like, say for instance, like you recorded something, and someone, whether or not you know that you could have done better, someone who doesn't have the level of experience that you have, or doesn't have the type of experience you have, that would say, I'll try to go a little bit more positive with the critique. Like, this was good, but I bet it would be better if you didn't do this, or if you had this. Like, for instance, when I was, when we were doing stuff for the Death Trail, Brad had asked me to try to work on and build these animatronic props, something I didn't know about, but started doing research of. And I got a couple of them working. And someone who had even potentially more knowledge of it than I did, because it was new for me, came in and said, "I don't think you did this right." And I was like, "No, I did, because it's working." So I just saying, like, in situations like that, I discredit that, because...
Well, that's not really constructive. I don't think you did this right is not constructive criticism. It's just criticism.
I don't even know. I don't even know if I would call that criticism. That's kind of just a statement.
That's true.
Does that mean, like I don't think you did that right.
They're not even sure.
I would say, okay, then criticize what I did, because that to me is just like a statement of I don't even know what that means. What do you mean I didn't even do it right? Like what? Like, because criticism is more specific. Oh, excuse me. Criticism.
That was Jeremy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna criticize you.
Criticism is more specific, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like just now, my elbow hit the table and caused audio problems. So it's like somebody saying, "You didn't do that podcast right." Wait, what? Yeah, because you hit the table with your elbow, and that caused audio problems, and that's what a podcast is audio, and you want clean audio. Oh, now I understand.
Yeah.
You know what? You're correct in your criticism of me. I should not have done that, barring it was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that.
But in that situation, you're saying the criticism was when they went in depth rather than
when they were specific.
rather than the statement of saying you did that wrong.
Right. So for instance, I know 1% about photography, whatever percent you know, okay? It's more than me. So I can look at one of your pictures. I don't know I have really no knowledge of it. But I could just look at it and go, oh, it's all right. That one's better. Well, what's wrong with that one? I don't know. It's dark. I don't like the colors. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm saying. Now, you can translate that criticism, and the criticism may not be a right or wrong thing, but I can still kind of say, for whatever reason, I just don't.
Is there and this is just something that I thought of because the way you like the example that you gave. Is there a difference for you guys when it comes to criticizing like a thing you do versus something that is subjective? So like, for instance, art is a subjective thing. Like looking at a painting or looking at a photograph or something you're observing, a song, for instance, because, for instance, like older songs might be people like highly regarded as like, this is the defining song for this genre of this time, like that kind of thing. But it might not be technically the best it could have been. Whereas something like fixing an engine is a concrete thing that there's no room for subjection. Either the car runs properly or it doesn't. So where do you think criticism falls, constructive or just being critical in a situation like that?
Well, I mean, are you talking about, because if it's something subjective and somebody's just saying, I like that or I don't like that, again, that's not really criticism. But if someone's saying,
well, I'm thinking like
even if they're like, I don't like that because that's not my favorite genre. You wrote a book, but I don't like mysteries, so I don't like it. That's not really a criticism.
Well, I think the criticism in that situation, those have to be like categorical too. Like, if you're not like mystery, then you're not going to be a good critic for it anyway, unless you're just like, if you're like, say, a book critic and you're like that writing style or, just the way you put it together. But like when you look at a piece of art, sometimes it's just like a gut thing, right? Something doesn't feel right for you. And like you're saying with the picture, you don't know how to communicate that. That doesn't necessarily mean, as you said, that it's wrong or right. But for you, it elicited a feeling that made you feel like you had to be critical in some way.
So this is the way I look at it. For me personally, I either want criticism or I don't. End of the discussion. Like, I don't care about constructive criticism or whatever. I don't even think of it in those terms. For me, I either want people's feedback or not. And if the feedback just be positive, whatever, or if it's critical, actual criticism, I just crave that. I crave that, especially for things like this. I crave that for when I'm speaking publicly. A lot of times how many times have I come to you and said, what was that? And you're like, it was good. Like, no, stop. Don't give me that.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to critically think about what I just did. What could I have done? How many times have I done that to you? A lot. Over and over again, because I crave the feedback. Whether it's constructive or not, I don't care. At that point, I just want feedback. Now, on the flip side, for like my personal music, when I put out a single, honestly, I could give a flip what anybody thinks. I don't care. Somebody could say, "Oh, I just don't think that that's your best recordings." That's fine because those are mine. I don't care. And I think a lot of painters are like that too. They're just painting. I don't care what you think about this painting.
You're doing it for the art.
I'm just doing it for like l'art pour l'art. Art for art's sake is something that in French in history, I think it was the government or maybe the church at the time was trying to basically own art and own its purpose. And there was some French artists that said, we're not going to make art for your political reasons or for whatever reasons you have. We're going to make art for art's sake, doing the work because it's just the work that needs to be done, you know? And so I categorize not types of criticism. I categorize things that I either want criticism or not. When I release a single, I don't care what you think. I just did it. I liked it. I'm putting it out. If you don't like it, that's fine. You can critique
Well, that's
it.
the thing is you're probably not going to put it out if you don't like it.
Right. And that's fine. But on the flip side of that, if I do a public speaking engagement and I come off the stage and I go, that didn't, especially with Phil, and Phil's a perfect type of criticism, feedback person, because to a point I'm going to make in a second, especially somebody like Phil, I say, something wasn't right. And I know you felt it too. What was it in your opinion? I have my opinion because we're the hardest person to judge is yourself and your own performance. So like, that's the way I look at it. I mean, whether it's subjective or not, of course it's everything regarding human relation is subjective, everything. So like, I either look at it as in, I want feedback or I don't. Now, in the instance of maybe that picture that I was referencing, if you were to ask me, what do you think about that? Or which one of these do you like better? Then you've opened the door to criticism. So you want to know what I think. Now, if you're just, hey, I got this website or this gallery or whatever it is, I like this one, I'm putting it up. And somebody walks up to you and they're like, hey man, that picture's dark. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But because you're not using that picture as something that you see as helping you to get better. That's just something that you like and you want people to see. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Whereas when I'm speaking, I don't want people just to like what they see. Hey, I'm public speaking today. Every single time I do it, I want it to be better than the last one. So then every time I do it, I'm going to go to somebody and say, what did I do wrong? What did I do better? Where did I ramble? Did it look like I knew what I was talking about? At what points was it weak? Did I go too long? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So to me, all criticism is constructive because whatever, and you could even say, well, I see, because I always think in terms of motives. That's why I like Phil. It's completely emotional. Like there's no emotion in it whatsoever. He's simply stating what he thinks is fact. But what if there's a person who just doesn't like you? Mm-hmm. And they're just going to be critical for the sake of being critical? Great. Because they're probably going to be the ones that are picking you apart. And they may just maybe give you that piece of information that you really need. Mm-hmm. That may be too harsh for somebody else to say. And the reason I don't care about their motives is because it's not their responsibility to get better for me. It's my responsibility. So I have to filter through all of that feedback, wherever it's coming from, whatever labels you can put on it, constructive, non-constructive, emotional, non-emotional, whatever it may be. It's my job then to take that feedback and figure out what to, honestly, with myself, what do I need to work on?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't care who it is. I don't care what it is, subjective, not subjective. I either want feedback, and I'm using the word feedback on purpose because sometimes critiques are,
inherently
you did
negative.
that. Well, sometimes they are negative and we think of it like that. But I also think like a movie critic isn't always negative. Mm-hmm. So if you want to think of it in those terms, sometimes a movie critic goes, this was great. Now here's maybe some points that maybe this person's performance wasn't that amazing, but this was great. So sometimes if somebody is being critical, to me, even though we carry that negative connotation and maybe even inherently the word itself
Yeah, I think
does.
there's probably origin in the language of it.
That to me, somebody could be like, I watched every single thing that you did, and I liked it. Okay. That's a critique to me. And maybe they can find one thing or the other, but that also is valuable to me, but maybe not as valuable as somebody who would say, you did good,
Right.
but here, and maybe both of those people are sincere, but I think the responsibility lies on me to take that criticism, whether it be more positive or more negative or whatever, and filter those things out to use that to try to get better.
Right.
And then the other aspect of it is I don't care about what anybody thinks about this other thing. So
And there's
it doesn't
probably
matter.
going to be some element of that is not necessary to take to heart. And I don't mean just necessarily take personal, but like, perhaps part of someone's critique is something that you are already trying to improve on, or something that you need to do better or could have done better, or just something that maybe is just genuinely like not a legitimate criticism. Just like
When I started my YouTube channel, one of the things that I thought about before I just uploaded the first video was that, all right, you put this piece of content out here, you're opening yourself kind of up to criticism from anyone in the world.
Just because it's out there.
Just because it's out there and people have the ability to do that. And the first thing that I got over was worrying about it. Because I think a lot of people, that's something they worry about. And I think with my personality and just this kind of newfound philosophy for me is that criticism doesn't hurt my feelings at all. It never does, and I'm always looking for it. Like you said, sometimes there's things you don't want feedback on. I think I'm a little different in I kind of want feedback on everything, good or bad. I've just decided for certain pieces of content, things that are meaningful to me, that even if it's bad criticism, it doesn't affect my opinion of it or my feelings about it. So I just uploaded the Martin Luther King spoken word that I did. I put a lot of work into that. Research. There were times where I on the verge of tears of reading things. So everything I've written, everything I put together, everything, it means a lot to me. I put it out there. Somebody could comment right now, I don't like this. This sucks. It wouldn't bother me at all. And I actually welcome it just because I would like to know what people think. And I'm always curious about what people think. But I think I've reached a point just in myself as a creator. I know that I have the power to decide how that criticism affects me or how that criticism is going to allow me to maneuver in the future. Okay, maybe I could have shot this a little bit better. Or, thank you for your opinion, but I like what I did.
Yeah, and it's important because my mom used to say something now that I've read in a lot of leadership material or whatever, self-improvement type things. It's that my mom used to always say, Jeremy, you are not what you do. And it's having the ability to separate ourselves from our creations, to separate ourselves from our performance. So, for instance, we share the stage together and play music together, and I may look at you sometimes and go, that groove, that drum fill sucks. Or I look at you sometimes, just don't do that.
Yeah. And so you do that all with your eyes.
If you are taking criticism how you shouldn't go, oh, he says, I suck as a drummer. People do that.
Yeah.
You say, that wasn't good. And they go, you saying I'm not good? No, I'm not saying you're not good. I'm saying that wasn't good. And that's just my opinion, but I happen to be the leader in this situation. I'm the brain of the band. So what I'm telling you is that doesn't work with everybody. And the way you should take that and the way I should take that is, okay, I'm going to do something different there. Not because I'm not good, but because maybe that could have been better there.
And maybe not even that wasn't good. Like what you did might have not been bad, but in that situation,
right,
it wasn't.
It just didn't fit.
Yeah. And the bottom line is, it's just not that big of a deal. Just for whatever reason, in that scenario, if I make that call, then you just change it.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And one of my favorite pieces of feedback that I ever got was from Phil. And it was one time when I got done speaking and I was like, man, I prepared so much. I thought the content was great. I thought the message was great. I thought, but it just didn't feel right. I remember I got off stage and I was like, Phil, man, like I thought I was prepared. I thought I was going to kill it and I just don't feel right. And he was like, hey, what you were saying was great. You just was too long. Just spoke, it was just too much. And I was like, and I'll be honest, I think in that moment, because I was younger too, I think my first reaction was like, who are you to tell me that I spoke too long? Maybe that's the time I needed to communicate it. Maybe, that's how we are like, what are you saying? I don't know how to speak publicly.
Yeah.
That's kind of our natural inclination, but I didn't. Part of the reason, because it's easy to take it from Phil because I trust him. And I say, you know what? He's right. Like, not like I'm not a terrible speaker. Just that time I spoke too long. So it's like, okay. So now let me take that and let me keep that in mind the next time I go. So we aren't what we do. We aren't our performance. And we have to be able to take the emotion out of the equation. For instance, if we've shot stuff before and you guys have filmed it and afterwards I've gone, man, I just felt like that could have been better. And one of the reasons we work well together is that I can say that camera you were holding in that spot just could have been better.
Yeah.
And you have the confidence and the understanding to stop and understand that I'm not saying you didn't do good enough. What I'm saying is that shot just could have been better.
Right.
And now I'm not saying that, but now it's on you. The responsibility is on you to go, okay, what could I have done better?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a very constructive way to work together. And the way that the dynamic in which we all work together, we face that every time we're together, pretty much. Every time we see each other, we're going, hey, that could have been different, or that could have been better, or that, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So I think, and that's something we had to learn because there was probably more tension 2 years ago than there is now. Right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
We've had to learn that dynamic.
Yeah. And because we've done a lot of, we've experimented a lot, done a lot of new things that we weren't doing or weren't really a part of our dynamic. I mean, a lot of us have been working together creatively for a while, but this is like a whole new layer to that. So,
you know what else is funny? It's hard for me. This is kind of a different look at criticism, but it's harder for me to give criticism than it is to take it.
mm-hmm.
Like Jeremy kind of talks about this all the time, and he says, he'll ask Phil, yo, what do you think about this track? And Phil will kind of like lay out all these things. And it's not necessarily that like I'm scared to give it or I just don't know what to say, but it's more so I think with people that I'm close with when it comes to giving criticism, I just want to focus on the good because I want to build people up. And sometimes I think that's a disadvantage to the other person because that feedback or criticism is how you grow. Sure. But it's always been, and it's something I've just kind of realized over the past maybe 2 years, it's a lot harder for me to give criticism than it is for me to, I'd rather take criticism than give it.
I think it's because as creatives or as a creative type person, like not even necessarily someone who does creative work, but just a creative personality, we all to varying degrees own whatever that creative output is personally.
Yeah.
So I think there's like, maybe you, Jeremy versus me would take, like, I think, and I'm not saying I would take it personal, but I think I take things, creative criticism or constructive criticisms of my creativity. I take them more personal than you do. Not saying that I do.
I would agree
that I do take it too personal, but I think that's my personality. So I think maybe there's origin of what you're saying in that maybe you don't prefer to give out criticism, like a negative criticism or constructive criticism, because you understand personally the ownership that you have in that creative process and in that item that is birthed from the creativity.
Maybe, but I think since it's something that I've kind of recently become aware of, I've gotten to the point where it's just like, let me think about it. Because initially, you're like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, it's great. And I'm not lying.
Right.
I'm not lying to you, but it's like, I want you to feel so good about what you did because I know what goes into that.
When I think people play different roles in people's life, you and Phil, and I've either told you this or I know I've told my wife this, that I ask you for criticism, but I'm not always satisfied when you give it to me because it's like, yeah, man, it's great. And I put you and Phil on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think people play different roles in your life. And you're a very encouraging person and you're very protective of people's emotions and how they feel. And you want to support them and you want to be that person. And that's fine. Phil doesn't care. Phil very, very, very just wants to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's candor. And we'll have a whole nother podcast on candor. But where I'm at, I crave, especially from different people, but from you guys too. I crave, when we shoot a video, I'll go, how was that? And me and Paulie were shooting before you got here yesterday. I'm like, how was that? He was like, it was good. And I was like, seriously? And he's like, do you want to do it again? And that was the feedback I needed. I was like, all right, let's do it again, because I don't want, and part of the reason is because I understand. I don't know what's best. And it's hard for me to judge myself. So I want somebody to listen. This is how I feel especially when it's a person that I respect the way that they do something, and I'm trying to do what they're doing. If I pick up that there's about to be criticism, there is no time in my life where somebody has my attention more than that moment. If I know somebody's about to critique what I've done, because I'm like, yes, because I have found the value in that.
Yeah.
I have seen or even working with people like Andy, who may not give direct criticism, but there's indirect things that they say.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll send them something and they go, yeah, thanks. This is cool. You know what I really like from you? Here's the criticism of what I just did. They change, they almost take it another direction and say, what I really like from you is when you do this. So what he's basically saying is, you didn't do that. and that's probably, I don't know if that's measured or if that's maybe he doesn't want to hurt the feelings or, he's like, man, I really like, or when he introduces me to somebody and he says, Jeremy is really good at this. Then I'm thinking, okay, what did I do yesterday that he didn't respond well to? That's kind of where I find the criticism. So I literally crave. I want to know what people think about what I'm doing.
Me too.
And it's not because I'm insecure. I just really want to know how I'm perceived because I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when I'm around somebody like that, man, I would love to just sit down. There are people, and I've done this before, where somebody's like, somebody I really respect. And they're like, yeah, man, you're doing great. And I'm like, yeah, what did you really think? Well, there's a couple things. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, give it to me. Lay it on me. That second song, I thought that second song was probably the weakest one. Okay. And I don't go, oh man, the second song. I don't feel anything. I'm going, okay, why do you think? What was it? It was slow. It was boring. I didn't like, okay, that song I wrote was boring. Why would, and I'm trying to think, and I don't I used to. I used to be like, oh man, I'm not stuck at writing songs.
yeah.
You know, I don't feel that at all anymore. To me, it's just like, yes, because I've found the value and I've seen it for when somebody goes, you're not good at that. Or probably the way you would like me to phrase it is you're better at this than that.
Yeah.
I like when you do this better than when you do that. And when I hear those things, I'm like, yes. Like, you know, and what it's caused me to do too was working with different people is to kind of tune my ears for those moments. So when somebody's like, man, like, I like when people do this. And I'm like, yes, got it. So like, I literally make lists when I'm with somebody that I want to work with. And they say something like, man, this dude sent me one time, this dude sent me this. And that was all he sent me. I'm like, making a note.
This is the thing I got sent.
And there's two parts to it, right? It's kind of like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So part of it is influencing people. And he says to do that, you show them that you care about them. And this is how you show people that you care about them.
Yeah.
But it's not just showing it, it's actually caring. So when I'm doing that to somebody, it's not because I'm being like some sort of like sneaky, persuasive person. It's two parts. One, it's yes, I want to work with that person because it'll benefit me personally. But it's also because I genuinely want to provide value for that person.
Yeah.
And I genuinely care. So when you start to crave criticism and when you really, really see the value in it, I think you begin to pick up on things that people say differently. And it becomes kind of like, and I feel like it's almost a skill that I've acquired. And this goes back to sales. We were talking about sales. It's like part of sales is trying to figure out what somebody wants. And you like one step in certain sales techniques is doing a needs assessment. So you literally start to ask questions and you're listening to someone. You're trying to figure out what are the things that they're telling me that they want, that they need. And I think that taking criticism and figuring out the different ways that people criticize me has allowed me also to open up my ears to figure out what it is that people really want from me, you know, in those scenarios.
Right.
I think if you're trying to like, so I'll using two of your examples, like when you're wanting to work with someone and you're taking those notes and those of their criticisms, in that situation, there's a respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's someone that you look up to, and you want to take their criticism to improve yourself for the purpose of in improving your relationship with that person or improving the potential output. In a sales position or situation, the respect level is you want someone to buy something from you. So you build that needs assessment, and you respect that customer as someone that's necessary in that feedback.
Yes. And it's also being humble enough to recognize that, as Bryan Cranston said in his book, A Life in Parts, great ideas can come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to recognize them. And it's also, yes, it is because there is respect there. But it's also recognizing that there's an 8-year-old kid here that might have an idea that's absolutely genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to be humble enough to recognize it.
Come from there.
And to recognize it and be able to accept it. And I'm sure there's examples. There's probably somebody listening to the podcast screaming like, this big thing was a kid's idea that somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that was one of the main things I took from Bryan Cranston's book, because he said great ideas. And I don't even know the context from which he said it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, man, that's so true.
My wife has criticized me like making videos, and she's came and said, I don't know about this. And I've changed things and they've been a lot better.
I think what's good there is like in your situation, like making videos on YouTube, you probably have a subset of your viewers who are also filmmakers, right?
Yep.
Or who are also spoken word artists. So it's good to get criticism from your peers.
Yep.
But it's also great to get criticism from the average person. Faith, you're not average, you're amazing. But like the general public, right? Because those are your general consumers.
And this was kind of the point that I was making when you mentioned about someone being knowledgeable. And I'm not saying now you were wrong. That's not the point. But like this
I take your criticism.
This was whatever, however you see it. This is what I was trying to communicate. Like really, is that I think it goes back to humility. Is not assuming that I know something that somebody else doesn't know, or not assuming that they just don't know something, because it may not even be a knowledge-based thing.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about ideas and good ideas, is that they just happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they literally can just come from anybody or from anywhere. You know, I can't remember who it was. I know who was it that started all? Maybe it was Walt Disney started on napkins or something. Who was it that? Oh, you know what I'm thinking? VeggieTales. A little different, but I think the VeggieTales were like started on napkins, and then SpongeBob I saw was started by a professor, like a aquatics oceanography professor or something like that.
I didn't know
but
that.
he just was like
kids?
like was drawing like these characters, I guess, as a way to teach or something. I don't know, but like, you know, and it's fun. It's like the birthplace of these ideas. Everything big starts small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or from a place of singularity, and then there's blows up into a universe or whatever, you know. So I think a lot of it is humility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Literally, I remember, man, I used to think that I knew stuff, and I had no clue. I mean, and I can look back now and I can just go, oh my gosh, I feel like I know less
Do you ever
now than what I thought I knew then. You know what I'm
Do
saying?
you ever like have a situation? This happens to me all the time, where I remember vividly, like I have like a photographic memory of a situation where I'm telling someone
And you were wrong.
and I'm looking back and I'm like, God, I'm such an idiot.
Yeah.
Sorry to hit the table. I'm an idiot. Like I like, and it's what's funny for me is like when that happens, I'm always like, I try not to get too caught up in it. I try to just like think about it and move on and not try to do it again. But like I sit there sometimes and I'm like, I think about how I can improve that situation that already happened, but I can't. You know what I mean?
And it teaches you then, this is scriptural, even a fool is thought wise if he keeps his mouth shut. You know, so sometimes it is better just to just keep your mouth shut, which is hard for me. That's usually the biggest criticism that people have of me, is I just talk too much.
I mean, I'll close my mouth in a heartbeat. It's just, I don't know. I prefer, and maybe this is the humbling part of me, I prefer to sit back and, just like I said before, I prefer to take the criticism. I actually get worried if I put something out there, if I ask for feedback and it's all positive.
Right.
I'm like, it has to be something. And like you said, just craving that feedback that's going to make me better.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely the type of person to just.
Sometimes that's just because some people just aren't. Maybe they're not at the point where in a relationship with you where they feel like they could really be honest about that.
Well, that's why you mentioned something earlier. You can kind of put things out there. I'm a part of a videography community on Facebook, and I
saw you
love
posting it earlier.
Oh man, I love. Well, that was you saw the other one,
the DMV filmmakers.
Yeah, I don't really post in that one a lot, but there's one that's like specifically for videography. And there's I did Austin and Martin's wedding, and I put that video out, and just nothing but like praise and just like, oh, you did such a wonderful job. You need to do my wedding, and I was just like, there's something I can improve on.
Yeah.
Posted in the videography community, and I still got a lot of love. But it was just like, yo, this is great. You did awesome. But here's where you can improve. And I was like you said, yes.
Yeah.
Taking notes. I know what to do next time.
Well, it's a powerful thing not to be afraid of criticism, because fear paralyzes in general.
Yeah.
But there's a huge part. I mean, even this, just being an audio engineer. Like, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, saying right now that I'm an audio engineer and putting this podcast out under the conditions from which we're doing it, I'm going to do the best that I can. But I know somebody's going to text me, email me, comment or something and say, well, what a crappy audio engineer you
It's
are.
gonna be us.
Because I can hear room noise, or
Yeah.
the way you using desk stands for the mics and hearing desk noise and this, and I mean those kind of that AKG 220 and the AKG 420, and like, so I know I'm opening myself up to criticism that I should receive
Yeah.
under the circumstances, but at the same time I'm confident enough to just take it
Yeah.
and say, yes, you're completely right. It could be better. Part of the reason I'm okay with taking it is I know how I could make it better. That's one thing.
That's kind of what I was saying earlier.
But it's like when I posted I have like 4 videos on my personal YouTube, and one of them has like 50,000 some views now, that review.
60.
And oh, really?
Yeah.
Thanks
He's
for
been following
keeping up. Who's counting? Kidding. But one of the first comments that I got was, a guy was like, basically like, man, your studio room sure sucks because you don't have any acoustic treatment. And he was right, but it was just after I'd moved my stuff down there. So that's like, all right, when I get a few $100s, I'm going to do this right. Well, I didn't have it then. So I had a choice there. And this was a lesson for me too. It's like, I could come back and be like, you know what, guy, forget you. I know what I'm doing. I know what needs. I just moved down here. Excuse. Or thankfully, what I decided to do in that moment is I just said, basically like, LOL, got me. Like,
Thank you, sir, for your advice.
I was like, yeah, you're right. I said, I know. I said, I'm getting there. Like, I got some plans. I just haven't done it yet, but I was like, and then his response was like completely not what I expected. So either I changed the guy's disposition, or it wasn't what I thought it was based on his comment.
You definitely controlled that situation.
Because he came back and he was like, all good, man. I know I'm trying to make some improvements too.
He doesn't have acoustic treatment either.
Just giving you a hard time, and I ended up like, there was a couple messages. He was like, so what are you planning on doing? And I was like, well, there's a company that makes these acoustic panels that I think would look good in here. And that's kind of half, I do want it to sound better, but I also want it to look good. So I'm going to do this. So we had this little conversation. So it just goes to show you, even sometimes when people come at you like that, you may be thinking they're attacking you, but maybe that's just your insecurity. Or maybe they are attacking you, but you can take control of the situation by being the bigger person. And doing that. So, yeah, I mean, you have to, if you're not willing to open yourself up, like you said earlier, if you're not willing to open yourself up to criticism, then you're not going to do anything.
Yeah. I think
and if you're not being criticized, like you
then
said,
you're not
man,
doing something.
Yeah, and I would be worried too.
Yeah. I think like for me, so as far as criticism goes, there's sometimes that I seek criticism like intentionally. There's other times that it obviously just comes from having stuff out there. And I take those things differently. How you were describing earlier about like the notes and like making like being very specific and trying to apply those into steps to get better. There's almost like different levels of criticism for me. Like say maybe like the general public side of things. If someone catches something, if it's that 8-year-old situation, I'm like, absolutely, you're right. And then there's other things. It's like, obviously, I'm the things that I know that I need to improve on. And then there's other criticisms where I'm like, I'm trying to get as much out of it as possible. Like, and I'm even like there's this photographer in the Atlanta area that I really look up to, and I'm regularly asking him for feedback on stuff. And then I'm like, he'll say something, and I'll be like, tell me more about that. What can I like dig in deeper on this specific criticism? Because I know it's a weakness of mine. What can I be doing better?
Feedback is how you learn. Mm-hmm. That's what teachers do. Yeah. That's what professors do. And sometimes it's pretty black and white, this was right and this was wrong. Sometimes if you take a writing class, you're looking at somebody who's read thousands of things, their life is dedicated to reading. And you write something and you give it to them to say, how does this affect you in light of everything else that you have ever read? And then they give you feedback. Right. And that's education. Mm-hmm. And this is why you can go to a multi-million-dollar corporation, let's say something like Sweetwater, you can order a microphone, and then what happens 2 days later? You get an email that says, please give us your feedback. Be as detailed as possible and be honest. How was the ordering process? Did you get what you wanted? Did we meet your expectations? Why did they do that? Because it's valuable.
Yeah.
And that's what I've found. It's just so stinking valuable for me for somebody to say anything. Whether it's somebody saying, miserable company, I don't like that name. That's a stupid name. Thank you. Because I want to know not just how I imagine it's going to affect everyone or a market. I want to know every individual that will give me anything. I want to know it. That's why Google pays for the app.
Google rewards.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
What did you do? Did you spend money? Yes. Here's
your
25 cents. Like, you gave me 25 cents for that? But any information, and that's what it is. To me, it's just gathering information.
I've made like almost $150 on there. Like, they've given
How
out
much do you have now?
$83.
I had never been over the $100 mark until I texted you guys that screenshot. I was like, I did it. I finally went over $100.
I just made it
if
over
you
the
don't know what we're talking
mark.
about, there's an app called Google Opinion Rewards.
Yeah.
And you can download it, and they literally just give you Play Store money, Google balance, whatever.
Yeah.
Just for your opinions, for your receipts, for your whatever.
It helps if you are sharing your location information with Google, because then they'll know where you've been.
Yeah, I'm over $100, and now I'm like, crap, I need to start renting some movies or something. Buying some apps.
I was actually looking at some audiobooks to buy. Yes, audiobooks.
You guys satisfied with that conversation? Anything else you think we need to hit?
How much time do we have?
About 10 minutes,
About
probably.
10 minutes.
Got some stuff?
Nope.
So that being said, if you want to criticize us or our podcast, please feel free to do so. It's better than hearing nothing.
Yes, very true.
So make sure to do all the
criticism.
all the things that people tell you to do: like, subscribe, follow, watch, listen, learn.
Blow us a kiss.
Don't do that. Is that it? You good? Paulie, you did pretty good with not hitting the table this time.
Oh, but I was watching you.
Why don't you end us with one good table hit? Thank you.